Hello and welcome to Mac&Mac College Football's weekly program on the Grueling Truth Network. My name is Sean McCormick, and with my son, Ryan, we go over the last week's games. We've got to talk about this week's games. A lot going on, not so much this week, right, Ryan?
Yeah, last week was a pretty good week in college football. Some big teams opening up with some big-time teams. This week is more like you like to call it the payday week.
Yeah, it is a payday weekend indeed. We'll get to some of that in a minute. Reason we say in payday, of course, a lot of FCS and lower echelon FBS programs, they're going to take lumps this weekend. You know, you've got Ole Miss, which just had a complete meltdown. We're going to talk about that in a minute against Florida State. Ole Miss, they get to play that juggernaut Wofford. So it's games like that, but it's kind of one of those necessary evils if you're the lower echelon Division I or the FCS programs, because one of those games can just make your season as far as the budget goes. So that's why we're calling it Payday Weekend. And before we get to that, just a reminder that you are listening to Mac&Mac on the Grueling Truth Network. Ryan, you topped the old man last week in your picks, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't do too bad coming out of the gates in week one. I did say in last week's show that whoever reached 20 points was going to win the Wisconsin-LSU game. However, I was wrong in that one because neither team reached 20 points. Wisconsin with a 16-14 win against LSU, and that's a big win for Wisconsin going into the Big Ten.
I kind of thought that LSU would hold on, even though the game was. Technically it was at a neutral site, but it's at Lambeau Field, which was kind of exciting in itself. I don't know whether you watched much of it. I watched a good bit of it. I enjoyed most of the game except for that vicious hit that the LSU player laid on the Wisconsin guy, and all he gets is a game suspension, which I don't even want to get into that because I really think that was a bunch of hooey. I think that kid should have been kicked off that team. If I would have been the president of LSU, I would have said, hey, Les, he's gone. I don't care how good he is.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you there. That kind of play has no room in today's game. I mean, it was blatantly, it had nothing to do with the play. You're maliciously trying to hurt someone at that point.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't even trying to tackle somebody. I mean, come on now. This is ridiculous.
No, the play was over when it happened.
It was over by 20 seconds. Ridiculous. But going into that game, Mike, we talked about it last week. We said it was going to be low scoring. I didn't think it would be that low scoring either. And I think I'm pretty sure that I thought LSU would come out on top. But Wisconsin, Paul Chryst had his team ready.
He did have his team ready to go, and, Les Miles traveling up to Lambeau Field. They just could not get the running game and Fournette going, in which Wisconsin's defense did a great job of shutting down the Fournette attack.
Yeah. I mean, and I think what the biggest overall picture there, I could just see the Big Ten conference commissioner and all the administrators of all the Big Ten schools giving a big hearty sigh of relief, because that's Big Ten versus SEC, and it's not lower-level SEC either. We're talking top-notch LSU. So round one goes to the Big Ten.
Then we also had the big loss for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, going down to Texas and playing a much better Texas team than they faced last year in South Bend that they just completely rolled all over.
Oh, the Hook'em Horns, man, they were on target there. They played a good game. Notre Dame played well as well. I'm still looking for Notre Dame's defense. I know we did during our preview show. We were talking about they were looking for great things to happen because their defense was going to be maturing a little bit. I just don't see that happening right now.
No, I mean, you've got to be disheartened if you're Brian Kelly and put up 47 points. No matter what level you're at, you should be able to win the ball game.
Yeah, you put up 40 plus, you should come away with the W. There were some questionable calls there on whether that was a hit to the helmet or whether it was not. Some of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish crew, they were a little upset with that. But when you think about it, you can't stop the big guy they bring in, and you can't stop that truck, man. The 18-wheeler, he just rambled, man. He rambled into the end zone.
He really did. I mean, every time he touched the ball, you know that he was running downhill, and if you got in his way, you better look out.
Yeah, it was an exciting game to watch, though. I mean, I thought that was one of the better games. It's certainly better than, and we both pretty much had it on the nail on the head with the USC-Alabama contest.
Yeah, Alabama did what I think everyone in the country thought that they would do, coming out and winning 14 straight season openers and make it 15 now, as they just made it a game for the first half with USC. And in the third quarter, I would have loved to have heard Nick Saban's halftime speech, because they came out fired up, ready to roll.
Speaking of fired up, we've got to talk about Florida State and Ole Miss. You know me, I like the defense. I thought the defense of Ole Miss, they shut down Florida State's offense for the first half. They pretty much just had their number. And a buddy of ours who's actually the assistant track coach at FSU, I was talking to him, and I said that I would have loved to have been in the locker room for that halftime speech by Jimbo Fisher. I mean, they were fired out. They came out all guns blazing there in that second half, and Ole Miss just didn't have a chance.
No, Ole Miss did not have a chance. Florida State came out and wanted to make a statement. It's their largest comeback win at Florida State was 22 points, which I kind of found that odd. As long as Florida State's been in existence and as many big games as they've played in, 22 points is their biggest comeback win.
Well, when you think about it, though, how many times are they trailing by a lot? You know, through the years, especially, and I'm only going back to Bobby Bowden, which was a good many, couple of decades anyway. And then you've got Fisher. They know how to win there. They know what to do with their players and know how to get them ready.
Well, and Ole Miss kind of forgot that you have to put 4 whole quarters together and not just 2.
It does happen. It does happen. Anything else surprise you in the first weekend?
No, nothing else surprised me. I actually called the Houston over Oklahoma, and I said it was going to be a game for the first half, and then Houston ran away with it. And just as I said, that's what they did. They must have heard me.
Okay, now, before we get into payday weekend, and by the way, you are listening to the Mac&Mac podcast, college football, right here on the Grueling Truth Network. My name is Sean McCormick, and along with my son Ryan, we bring it to you every week, just breaking down and telling you all about NCAA football. Payday weekend's coming up, but I do have to mention, you know, I grew up in the Pittsburgh area. I've got to mention something that hasn't happened in Pennsylvania since the year 2000, and that is Pitt and Penn State. First time in 16 years that Pitt is going to play Penn State. The game is at Heinz Field. It's a noon kickoff on Saturday. It's going to be, it's probably more hoopla than anything. Although I'm quickly falling in favor of the way Pat Narduzzi really coaches the Pitt team. I love the defensive schemes. I liked him. Loved him when he was D'Antonio's defensive coordinator at Michigan State, and he's brought that same, I like to call it a vicious enthusiasm on the defensive side of the ball. And the more they're learning his system, the better they're going to be. So Pitt's playing Penn State, first time in many years. There's a lot of smack, a lot of smack talk going on. There's a lot of Penn Staters all around the nation. There's a lot of Pitt folks all around the nation. Probably none bigger, literally, than Tony Siragusa. The Goose. I loved it because it used to be when he was at the University of Pittsburgh. That's when they went. I don't know why they got rid of the script P, the script pit on the helmet. They got rid of everything, and they wanted to be called the University of Pittsburgh. And then he gets into the NFL with the Ravens, and purposely, when he would be on Monday Night Football or one of the Sunday Night Football, they would have him announce his own name as the nose tackle, and he just would say Tony Siragusa Pitt. I mean, down, guttural, just nose tackle-ish, if you will.
And I think that goes to show you the more blue-collar attitude of the Pittsburgh area as well.
And I just saw a quote of his, and I hope I get it right. He said, and I know I'm gonna make some people upset here. He said, if I wanted to learn how to sing a song, I would have went to Notre Dame or I would have went to Penn State. But I wanted to play vicious defense, and that's why I picked Pitt. I mean, how can you not love a guy like that? How can you not love a guy like that? On the other hand, Penn State, James Franklin. I'm not going to get into all the fiasco of the Nittany Lions over the past few years. Frankly, I'm surprised they didn't even. There was talk of getting the death penalty and everything else because of the Sandusky situation. A lot of Penn State fans upset because Paterno, fell from grace. Not going to get into that either because I was a big Joe Pa rooter growing up, but I'll tell you what, after you learn all of that information, you just kind of got to shake your head. Football is football, but right is right and wrong is wrong.
Absolutely, and so many Penn State faithfuls, they still can't get it out of their head that they're just looking at the Joe Paterno that won a lot of games in the 80s and 90s and the 70s, not the Joe Paterno that didn't turn somebody in for a very, very bad situation.
Right, exactly. Now, getting back to the game, James Franklin, I'm going to go out on a limb. I think James Franklin's job could be in jeopardy starting with this game on Saturday.
Well, and I don't disagree with you at all. O'Brien set a pretty good preference because that's when all the sanctions were put on them, and O'Brien did pretty well through those years with what he had to work with and the limited amount of scholarships. And Franklin, coming from Vanderbilt, is trying to turn that team around, and he better do it pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to be quite that bad, but you never know. I mean, there are a lot of Nittany Lion boosters out there, and they don't want to see a loss to the blue and gold of Pitt. I mean, I don't care if the game is at Heinz Field. There's a lot of blue and white's going to be there. And the blue and gold, and I know they've actually talked about telling fans to kind of cool it and just let the rivalry start up again, and let's not have any ugly situations. And I don't think there will be. I think you're going to see a tough football game, but I do think Pitt is going to end up the winner. I'm going to pick Pitt this week, and I'm going to even give them a score. I'm going to say it's going to be 23-16. They're going to win.
Now, I'm going to go a little bit on the higher end, and I'm going to actually take Penn State 31-21. Just because Penn State coming from the Big Ten, they just don't play the people that Pitt just does not play the teams that Penn State plays week in, week out. And I don't think they're ready for the challenge.
You're upsetting some ACC followers. I can tell you that right now.
Well, I was all about the ACC last week and talking about North Carolina and Clemson scoring some points. But when you bring the Big Ten compared to the ACC, I think you're getting a whole different level of ball.
Okay. And you are listening to Sean McCormick and Ryne McCormick, Mac&Mac on the Grueling Truth Network college football program. Okay, now, Ryne, getting into the payday weekend. We touched on it a little bit earlier. Payday weekend. A lot of these schools, they don't really want to go and get their squad beat up. I always use the best one you can always think of is Appalachian State against Michigan, going up to the Big House and a few years ago, just upsetting the apple cart of college football. It was something that was unheard of, and they come out with a win. And that's part of the mystique of the lower level schools playing the biggies. It doesn't happen 99 times out of 100. What is it? Ohio State, they're playing Tulsa this weekend. Is that correct?
Yeah, you got Tulsa at Ohio State. You got University of Central Florida at Michigan, Lamar at Houston. And then you got Jacksonville State going to LSU. And I look for LSU to really turn it around. Fournette runs for 200, rushes for 4 touchdowns this week.
Yeah, I feel sorry for anyone who's going to have to face the Bayou Tigers this week because they're not happy campers.
No, they're not. They went into Lambeau Field last week, a game that they very easily should have won. Wisconsin just outplayed them.
I was surprised because a Les Miles team rarely gets out-hit. And in my opinion, they were pretty much out-hit.
Yeah, it took a while for Fournette really never did get going. He did bust a few big ones, but Wisconsin's game plan was obviously, as any team that faces LSU this year is to stop Fournette, which they did a pretty good job of last week.
And then you've got we mentioned number 19 Ole Miss. They're gonna be playing Wofford. I feel sorry for Wofford as well because Ole Miss is going to come out and say, hey, we need to play 4 quarters of ball. I don't care if it's an FCS program or not. I look for that to be just an ugly score, as I do with the OSU game. Who else can we talk about that's going on there? I mean, we've got. I'm just taking a real quick look. Even when you look at Marshall. I'm going down here to a MAC school. They're playing Morgan State. Kent State, another MAC, is playing North Carolina A&T. Like I said, this is really it's a time of the payday weekend, and it should start with a school like. Kind of curious what your thoughts are, Ryan. We're going to use Ohio State as an example. Now, when you're thinking about Ohio State, last week they played Bowling Green. That's sort of one of those requirements. They play at one of the Ohio institutions every year. And now they're going to play Tulsa. What's that going to do to them, the Buckeyes' chances of gaining ground on Alabama?
Well, it's not going to do anything to benefit them for sure. And obviously, I've said it before, the SEC is by far the best conference in the country. So when you get an SEC team as like an LSU playing at Jacksonville State, I get it. Your rest of your schedule's packed. You look at a team like Ohio State, the Big Ten is not near what the SEC is. So I think that's why that Big Ten SEC thing has been going on there for a while.
Now, but then on the other hand, Notre Dame kind of plays some tough schedules all the way through, and that comes out to hurt them historically over the last few years. So you kind of can understand where Ohio State is coming from. It just depends on when you want those games going in.
Well, and I think if you're a big school like Ohio State, they did a great job last week. They got up big and didn't take their foot off the gas, and that's what you got to do. This week too, if you're Ohio State, facing Tulsa, you got to get your guys in there, and you got to rack up some points, and you got to just pray that you don't get anybody hurt and get everybody out in time.
And speaking of sacrificial lambs, we're talking about number 3 Florida State and the great performance the Seminoles had. They're hosting Charleston Southern. So, and just to go one notch up, number 2 Clemson, they're playing Troy. Now, Troy has, it is an FBS program now, but you got to wonder, and I know what Charleston Southern's doing. They're probably going to take out of Seminole land. They're probably going to take out a cool $500,000 for their football program. So they're going to pay for probably their whole year by getting beat up by FSU. Okay, and you are listening to the Grueling Truth Network. I'm Sean McCormick, along with Ryne McCormick. We are talking college football, payday weekend, about the best game going on anywhere. Saturday, Pitt and Penn State. We've come to disagree. I'm choosing Pitt. Ryne's choosing Penn State, correct?
Penn State by 10.
Okay, and that's going to wrap it up for this weekend edition of Mac&Mac's college football program. Thanks for joining us.